Tengo un feliz anoche y bienvenido a en otro interesante programa de Puro Plus da Informar. A mí está Dudley Ferdinandes, mi su presentador de Avenoche. Avenoche nos tiene otro interesante programa para nos tiene un invitado muy especial que basta años y acaba de formar parte de Puro Plus como voluntario, pero hoy via você não a ser conhecido de cerca. Met de papi de Robert Singh. Robert Singh está trabalhador social de profissão, está especializado no terreno de suicídio e também Robert Singh está uma pessoa que a vive na Kosovo e aqui na ela duna cura para seu aporte ela de Guyana, ela estuda na Guyana, ela grava na Universidade de Guyana, pero foi o momento que ela vem em Kosovo. Esta forma parte de nossa família de Cura Plus e esta dona nosso saber e conhecimento. Pois, sentado tranquilo, vamos enjoy a noite nos conversação com Robert Singh do meu programa Cura Plus te informar. Nós vai com break, diz nos também. E será conhecido com Robert Singh. Nos programas de hoje vai estar em inglês, o professor Robert fala em inglês, e me seguro que você não compreende a explicação que ele traz delante de seu mês e também seu trabalho que ele faz e é parte bonita que ele compartilha aqui com Cura Plus. Robert, good evening, welcome to Cura Plus da Informar.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate it and looking forward for more of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Robert, the first question, everybody wants to know, who is Robert Singh?
Okay. Well, a lot of people will ask, who am I? And sometimes it's very difficult for me to say, who am I? Because normally it's hard for someone to introduce themselves to an audience because you do not want to take the credit. You always want people to see the credit for themselves. But I guess in different places you have different approaches. So basically I will say in a nutshell that Robert Singh is a social work practitioner who is having a lot of skills and competency in the area of HIV and AIDS, suicide prevention, along with other health issues like diabetes, hypertension, nutrition, and along the line because I work in a hospital setting.
Okay.
And added to that, when I finished graduating, I started my career in a hospital.
Okay.
And even then in a hospital setting, a lot of people find it strange. But what can a social work practitioner do in a hospital?
Exactly.
Because a lot of people think hospitals are only designed for nurses and doctors and labs and so on. But a social work practitioner is equally important like any other medical staff. So working in a hospital after graduation, first career and still up to now, then I migrated here, is that I went there to manage persons who are living with HIV. And working there for like the first 3 months, I was told that there are a lot of people who attempted suicide, came into the hospital, hospitalized, got their treatment, and just went out. So no intervention was done, no psychosocial support, no referral, no case management. And me as a social work practitioner, even though I go there to work in one capacity, I am willing and I am motivated to help people who attempt suicide. So I took on the responsibility. I asked the medical superintendent and the regional health officers. These are people who are in higher status, who must give the okay. And they asked me if I have the skills and competence to do that. I said yes, because I came from the premier institution with 1 year training who can be able to do those interventions. And I took it, and Dudley, when I took it, I did not know it was so heavy.
Okay.
It was so heavy in the first 6 months, I actually get burnt out. And I had to advocate for another practitioner come on board to assist me, because the cases were so much high and they were so much in demand that you do not want someone to walk out, to go away without giving that necessary assistance.
Robert, you start working in a hospital, so you have dealt with both HIV and suicide,
That's correct.
as I say, face to face.
Yeah.
When we talk about suicide,
Mm.
the Curaçao culture, suicide is a word that not just create panic, but can open a whole Bible with a whole of myths and beliefs that people might use against the person who attempt or intend to do this. You as a social worker who have faced this front to front, tell our people, what is suicide according to Robert?
Well, there are so many misconceptions of suicide. So I want to make sure that when I'm speaking about suicide, I have the correct definition, because a lot of people get mixed up with the terminologies. But suicide is a death caused by self-inflicted injury. It is where I have this willingness, where I have this motivation, where I come to this point that where I want to end my life. And this is not because of you are telling me to end my life. It is I come to the point with all the struggles that I'm having, and come to the point and I said, definitely, this is what I want and this is what I'm going to do to end my life. That is suicide. Now, the correct terminology that we are using now is that we are not saying that people say, okay, well, Robert committed suicide. We are saying like the recommended language is death by suicide.
Okay.
So we're not saying that, okay, I know a family someone who committed suicide. We're using now, I know someone who have had death or died by suicide. The other thing is that we want to look at is that suicide attempt and the attempt and the outcome. These two variables are critical for someone who can understand suicide. For example, let's say that I make to the point where I want to die by suicide, or let's say in common term, I want to kill myself. And I was in this struggle that I just went home and I come to a point that I see something there lethal, like a bottle of aspirin, that I say that I'm just going to use this to end my life. So I took the whole bottle of aspirin, but obviously I was rushed to the hospital and I survived. So that now goes down as an attempt of suicide. But I want to focus on the attempt and the outcome. So it's an attempt and the outcome is that I live. But the intention does not change. I still have this intention because my intention is to kill myself.
One person, does the people who attempt to commit suicide know indeed what suicide is?
Yes, In my experience and people here, I don't have so many experiences here, but I know that suicide generally have common characteristics.
Okay.
So if I am attempting, it is the point I made where I made the choice that I want my life to come to an end. But because what I used was not lethal enough to kill me, but that doesn't mean to say that my intention changed. The outcome that I'm still alive, but the intention is still in me to go on to want to end my life. And at that stage, when you're doing your intervention and you're doing your counseling and support, if people just look at, oh, Robert just attempted, he didn't really want to die, he just attempted, it can give you the wrong message and you will not know how to find help for me. So if the outcome that I live, but my intention is there, that I want to kill myself, you have to provide the support to help me to change my intention.
Okay.
That is different.
It's very good explain, Robert.
Now,
We-
before we go on, there are some other issue with the terminology I want to point out. Because normally when someone attempts suicide, people get the idea that they commit suicide.
Okay, there's always that confusion.
Yes, I did.
Admitting is committing.
Yeah, because I remember one mother came to me and she said, Robert, I would like your help with my son who committed suicide. So it sounds laughable, but she didn't know that committed means that you die, you're not there anymore, and if you attempt, you survive. So I said, where is your son? She said, he's at home. And I asked her if he's alive. She said, yes, he only commits suicide. So the mix up there, we have to clarify it. The attempt is when you attempt but you survive, and the die by suicide, you are not there anymore. Okay, so these are some of the terminology we want to make sure that our listeners understand. And not the last one, but this one here that is important to what we call suicide ideation.
Mm-hmm.
Because if someone come to the point of want to end their life by suicide, it always starts with a thought. It has a beginning with a simple thought. And these thoughts come by push factors. Because no one did wake up in the morning and say that, okay, today I'm going to kill myself, or today I just want to die by suicide. It has to start with a thought and the crisis that follow. For example, one day you wake up and say, at certain age you want to go into certain career, or you want to achieve certain things in life. It has a thought. Come with a thought. Like you're a successful therapist, a counselor, it started with a single thought.
Exactly.
And it built up and up to a point where it realized and it becomes true.
Yes.
Like suicide, it started with a thought, a single thought of that, I want to end my life. But this thought is not that you wake up without any challenges. It started with a crisis, then it moved to two crises, and several other challenges come together and make a big struggle on you. Come to a ceiling where you can't handle it anymore, and you start plan for suicide. So the ideation is the process that where you want to do it, you don't want to do it. You're 60% going to do it, and 40% you're not going to do it. And as time goes by, you don't get any help. You meet at 90%, I want to do it, and 10%, I don't want to do it. With the ideation, it's important to recognize that even the ideation, you provide the right intervention to me, I can change my mind.
Okay. Robert, we're just going for a commercial break, and when we come back, we continue with this very interesting topic. Dus bij een break, het is dus te weg. nostra back din nostra conversação com Robert Singh, a noite din Pura Plus está informar. Robert, you mentioned a very essential point that everything starts with a thought. In the Curacao culture, most of the time we do not put attention to this aspect. Many times the whole scenario of something is happening is going in front of us, but because we are so lax in this whole thing of suicide, of death by suicide, that most of the time we don't even react until at the end of the day that the person commit and the person is dead by suicide and a note remain. And in that note, we get the whole scenario. How important is to put attention to this thought?
Okay. Very good question, Dudley, because these are the little things that we miss, and when we miss them, we also end up being so negligent that when we had the opportunity to help someone, it was too late. So there is a need for a lot of training and education. I come to your point in a minute, but I understand that your organization is going to take on the responsibility of training people to become gatekeepers. That is an essential element for the prevention of suicide. It's so critical that when people are trained, they are able to recognize the signs, they are able to recognize a change of behavior in me if I'm suicidal. And at that point in time, they can step in and provide some form of intervention and save me from the day. So, getting back to your question, it's a thought that comes with something that I want to do, and as we go on, because if I have a thought that I want to end my life, it means that it has to start with at least I'm going through having like 4 crises at the same time. It's not going to start with one situation. For example, if I lose my job, I'm not going to turn to suicide because we have millions of people who lose their job
And still alive.
and still alive. So let's take, for example, I'm using me. It's a scenario. What I'm saying about me is not necessarily true, but I'm using me as a person. Let's say that, okay, I'm in my 50s. Yeah, I'm in my 50s. I'm living with HIV. I'm keeping my status unknown. People just some assume, but some people know. I barely have a job that just give me at the end of the week that I can put food on the table for myself, or I may have responsibility. I'm paying a rent, but the one factor that was keeping me up is my job. But I lose that. When I lose that, I lose my reason for living, because where will I earn? How will I earn?
And at age of 50.
And I have responsibility, and I'm living with HIV. So when I look at that 4 things, these 4 struggle, and as time goes by, the thought is burned. I started having thought, I think the best thing is that I should end my life because I am not seeing no help. And then I have people who are part of my social group. I'm not alone. And then I started to change my behavior. That thought now produced the ideation where I'm thinking now to end my life. And these situations go on that there are signs now. I used to be every Friday night in the group. I start skipping. And people notice it, but they are not mindful. I used to be this jovial person, happy and so on. Next thing you know, I'm withdrawn. I'm sad. I'm always thinking about different things. I am there in person, but I'm not part of. Follow on, I started to turn more. I never used to drink. I am not using alcohol, but I started to turn to alcohol, right? I never used to be aggressive. I always to be kind and gentle and meeting out to people. Now I'm aggressive. People can hardly approach me. So all of these are signs that are showing there, but people are not informed about suicide.
Robert, can people also be the opposite? Like being extremely happy,
Yes.
extremely joyful, that you think that everything is okay?
Good point, because normally when suicide happens, whether it's death by suicide or the attempt of suicide, and a lot of people look for only the negative signs, but they are very rare cases, but it do happen that someone can start with negative sign, but they can switch over to the positive, to be calm and to be appear to be generous and happy, but it's a facade. It's a facade to show, because they feel that they don't want their family or their loved ones to feel burden and pain. But even to that is a change of behavior, because normally I am not that person.
Exactly.
So even though that I present myself to that, some people will say that, okay, no, Robert is not like this. It's something that, is he on medication? You know, the usual talking. And coming back to the same point and change of behavior, I want to bring this one example to you. While I was in a community, because I work a lot also in communities in different regions in Guyana, you have community. You know, Guyana is a very big country, about 214,000 square kilometers. Curacao is only 444, so Curacao can fit like over 400 times in Guyana.
Yeah.
So we have big region, and in the region where I work, you usually go out in communities that I consider hotspot. So what I will do when I prepare my half yearly report, I will say, look, a lot of suicide attempts and death by suicide is coming from Bandabao. Let's say like that. And then you go there and you try to have a conversation, a community kind of intervention, and let people know that when people are feeling this way, there are certain help and helpline where they can get this help from.
Exactly.
So while I was conducting this training, one gentleman who's a pandit, and a pandit for our viewer is like how we have the Christian priest. In Hinduism, you have the pandit. You know much about pandit. Yes. You are very versed in your culture. So he was telling me that his 16-year-old son died by suicide, but he was disputing what I'm saying, that he did not see any changes in the son behavior. So I started to reflect. I said, was your son close to the mother or the father? And usually sons are closer to their mother at that particular developmental phase in their life. So he said that his son was very close to his mother. I said, look at the normal behavior. When the child leave home to go to school, did he kiss his mother and say, Mom, I love you, and then he will go? Yes. I said, when he come back in the evening or from school and said, Mom, I'm home, and give her a hug and so on? Said, yes. I said, with those two behavior, anything change? Yes. He started to walk straight up to his room, eating in his room, isolate himself and stay in the room, and then the kissing and the hugging, all of those things stopped prior to the suicide. So it's a change of behavior. They thought it's a normal teenage behavior. But even if you think like that, darling, you still have to ask.
And that is exactly the kind of way and behavior that we are accustomed in our culture. That parents sometimes, it doesn't have to do with suicide, with anything. The moment they realize that my son or my daughter is in the room, parents might say to you, oh, it's a young people thing. Okay, maybe she don't want to be talking with anyone, but never ever they put attention into something is going on. My daughter, my son is not the same as I have seen him or her all the time. And that's why I'm saying it is important what you are explaining, that we put attention to those thoughts and behavior, because there is the key for people to understand that we can be a time to help, we can provide a solution if we are really putting attention. And most of the time, at the end of the day, is that note. Is that note that bring the whole castle down when it happened.
Let me continue on that point. What I found in my practice, in the beginning, I find it to be very strange, is that while I am going through these challenges, right, and showing these signs, I believe that my parents knew. I tell myself that they know. I'm saying to them, Dudley, they know that I'm going through this. And when I come to the point of attempting the suicide, then they are telling me that they don't know. So it's a misconception. Me as a suicide person having this ideation, and I'm using me as an example, thinking that you as a parent, you know what I'm going through, but honestly you don't know. So the question remains, if I don't know, you don't know, you see changes in my behavior, come to the simple point and ask me, Robert, how are you today? That one little question can save my life.
Exactly. We're going for a commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk with Robert about something that is happening right now in Curacao that has everybody concerned, the whole situation with the school Marnix. We would like to get from Robert what is his opinion on whole this issue, that this can be signs to attempt suicide. Tjus nos terback. Para informar a noite nós estamos trabalhando com Robert Singh sobre diferentes aspectos de suicídio, atentar na cometer suicídio ou morto via de suicídio. E no momento aqui nós trabalhamos com o Robert algo que agora que está roupa de notícia é caso de Marnix, estudante de tudo que está passando. Robert, right now Curacao has a reality going on, issue about the school in which the children has been treated in not a very good way by the police. There is an issue about a teacher that has been not having the best behavior towards the students, that we can say a little bit is conducting to pedophile and things like that. All that is happening right now with this school, and especially the students who are involved into it, can we say that we have to be careful, that we have to be more alert, because there is like an attempt, or in the future can be caused to attempt that one of these kids can commit suicide?
Well, Thank you very much. I was paying attention to the Marnix College,
Yes.
and I was picking up bits of information because most of the information are either in Netherlands or Papiamento. But even amidst of that, I can able to pull out and extract some of the very important part of the information, and also that there's a newspaper called the Curacao Chronicle that
Mhm.
comes in English that really helps me to understand the situation at the Marnix College. And it's very unfortunate, it's regrettable, and for a school, a situation like that should not have occurred if they were better understanding of children and any kind of deviant behavior situation is supposed to be handled in a more professional, a more social, and more in a way that the protocol should not bring harm to children. But if my situation or my memory serve me correct, is what I understand is that it is alleged that there are children in the school are involved in either using or selling drugs.
Exactly.
And if a school has such problem, it means that those problem or challenges arise that there is a lack of management in the school. That one. The other factors can be that children who are using and selling drugs, it means that those children come from a home that can be broken. It come from a home that where they are not properly supervised, and it can be situation also for those who are selling the drug. It means that the home is going through some sort of financial challenges. So there are a lot of social issues going on with the school, and the children who are coming there also, they come with these challenges. And we know as teenagers have their own challenges. To be a teenager in this world today, it's very, very risky. You are open to all different kinds of negative influences. You are, if no one's there to support you or give you guidance, it means that you are easily influenced on the bad side. I have to put this scenario to come to a point to show that there are a lot of vulnerabilities of the student in the school. And the vulnerabilities pointed at where student protective factors are broken down. And in that case, students who come to the school can be the last safe place for them. And imagine me, a 16-year-old who comes from a home with less support, that I find most of my support at the school with my peers, and even to that environment, I am being violated.
Exactly.
So in a case like that, is that we look at all the push factors, and let's say that someone who was a student who are involved when they conduct the research.
Yes.
In conducting the research, you cannot have a student take all their clothes off and having them bend over and check all part of their anatomy in this manner. It means that the last safe place that I have believed in is now violated. That can put me at risk because all my protective factors are either compromised or they are being broken down, and the one where the school I consider to be very protected, even that environment violated, and it put me at risk. And the risk can increase my thinking is that, look, it has gone too far now, is that I have no place in this world. Should I live on? And to crown it all, or the icing on the cake, is that you have me going through this kind of examination, this kind of behavior that I could not want to show my face anymore. We know how people body are, that our bodies are sacred.
Yes.
And as teenager, we know that we don't want no one to see our private area. No.
Because it's a process of development, of changing, of become adult, but still we are reserved to what is that.
Yes, and even in the most open culture, people still, your privacy is your privacy, and it is unfortunate that it happened to the student. So in that case, it can generate suicidal thought.
Okay, so
It can.
what you're saying, Robert, is that not only teachers has to be alert in schools right now, but also parents has to be very alert.
Well, what I think, if I can give a recommendation, is that these students who are affected, they must be able to be screened or to be interviewed, to provide this psychosocial intervention, talk children who are more at risk. You have to talk with them. You have to provide this care and support, but you have to talk with them and ask them in a very caring, showing a lot of empathy, if or do you feel or do you having thoughts that you want to end your life. You must able to ask in a very direct but caring and professional way. It's not like, so you want to kill yourself. You know, that is not showing any compassion. But you must ask the question. And not only the teachers, because of the parents need to be vigilant. They need to observe their children, how they are behaving, if there are any signs that we discussed before. And there must be some sort of supportive unit where these parents can have feedback with this unit to understand what is going on so that they can prevent any further happening. So indeed, it's a question of concern, and indeed it can generate suicide ideation. There's no doubt about it. It's not that we are predicting, because of the vulnerability of the situation, where school are a safe place, they're a safe zone, and if that is being violated, and in the manner how it is being violated, it means also there is a need for information for the police. There's training for the police, there's training for the teachers, there are even training for the parents. So in all of this situation now, they should have some debriefing, some sort of information to give out to parents to help them to understand how to observe changing of signs and behavior. Some people may have sleep pattern disrupted, eating pattern, mood swings. These are all pointers. Parents have to be informed and do not miss the sign.
Robert, how quick these actions need to be take place? Because sometimes we might be facing the problem, we know what the issue is, but before we reach to put action, there's a lot of talking, blah, blah, blah around, while the victims are going to a lot of other things that no one is putting attention to it. You just mentioned a lot of things right now. Mood of eating and everything can change, and a lot of other things. How quick parents, teacher, those who are responsible has to put action into this?
Well, let me just do a little correction. We wouldn't want to call them victim, because that's a common word, and we make mistake with words, because that was the word we were using before.
Mm-hmm.
But the answer, Dudley, is now.
Okay.
They shouldn't have decided what we are going to do. The plan should be there. Soon as the incident happened, there's supposed to be a crisis team who respond and start to take the
That's
bull
one
by
thing
the
that
horn.
we have not seen in place yet.
No, well, that's very risky, because it leaves me open that I'm going through with all the struggle that I'm having, and I am thinking that no one cares for me, because that was not the only struggle I'm experiencing. I was experiencing all the other struggle, but I come to the school as a safe zone, and now this is happening to me. So that is pushing me further or closer into what something can develop. And the ideation are there, and the intervention has to be now. It has to be as now as in now, because when I heard what happened with these children is that my heart goes out. I said, wonder if the parents at home are paying attention to these children. Wonder if anybody's observing the change. Wonder if parents are not there, because a lot of people struggle to put food on the table.
Yes.
What about if it's a single parent who the mother who is have to divert most of her attention to other things, and thinking that nothing, the teenager, he or she is not going to do anything because they don't know, the parents don't know. So there must be an immediate now support system, at least a crisis team, to go through these situations step by step with these children until they are fully integrated. And even beyond that, the one who supposed to be very high risk, after the assessment, you have to keep following them at least for the next 6 to 3 months.
Very good, Robert. Thank you for that information, because I think this is something that all of us are concerned about it, and everybody wants to give a help, but the way you explain it right now, showing that we need to act now, is not a question of sitting and waiting, because you have young people, teenagers, who step into a new year of school without any expectation that something like this could happen, but it happened right now, and we have to deal with the reality, but we need to find solution into it for us to at least assure that these teenagers can continue a year of school comfortable and knowing that they are people that care and has empathy to what is going on. Robert, before we finish our program, because Robert will be coming back, this is not the last program, what is your message to our community based on everything that is happening right now, and that suicide is something that is not just sneaking at the back of the door, but it is a reality in front of us right now?
Well, in answering to that, I want to pick up on the same situation at the Marnix College, is that if we have this working understanding already in our culture, or in the culture of Curaçao, that suicide is just taboo, and it is a topic. Taboo means that it's a subject or a topic that you're not supposed to put any attention to. And let's take a situation that happened with the Marnix College, where it's a taboo, and parents are not putting attention to the changed behavior of their children or other children, and it's a taboo. That's a dangerous combination. That is a mixture of potash and other poison. When you take it, you can't survive. So you cannot put taboo at this moment. It means that if you still have the notion or the belief that suicide is a taboo, it means that you are going to put your own child at risk. So the message is not only on this situation, the message is that from all the discussion that we had, is that we have to have more conversation about suicide. We have to remove the stigma. We have to put this taboo thing aside. We can't go on as a people, Dudley, in the 21st century and still think that suicide is a taboo. We can't go on and still think that HIV is a taboo. And while people are saying it is a taboo, you're not supposed to talk about it, they are doing it. So what is the true working definition of taboo? Taboo means that it comes from a religious or a social or a cultural context. For example, in Guyana culture, one of the taboos say that if some salt fall on the floor, is that you have to take some water and melt it, because when you die and when you die in that life, you will have to pick it up with your eyes. And it has no scientific bearing on the present day life. Or example, if you're passing by a cemetery
Exactly.
and you point to it, you have to bite all your fingers and put it behind your back, or else your fingers are going to subsequently rotten off. And I find those taboo have no evidence of what is happening in life today.
Yes.
So if we as a people still thinking that suicide is a taboo, it means that we have to slip ourselves out of that thought. And those things come with education.
Exactly.
And I want to emphasize that Cura Plus is the only agency up to now. You are the only agency that is doing training in suicide prevention, and you are the only agency people who are willing to talk boldly about it. Because if we don't talk about it, we are going to bury our heads in the sand, and we are not going to get anywhere. You know, the 10th of September was World Suicide Prevention Day. To be honest, I didn't hear anything from the government. I didn't see anything on the news. The only article I saw, it's an article from the newspaper, I think it's the Flamingo News.
Yes. Yes.
They had something, and I need to commend that editor on that article. That's the only thing I heard. And it is quite an embarrassment that we as a people do not want to talk about suicide.
Exactly.
Well, if we don't want to talk about suicide, the simple fact we are going to lose people. And maybe we don't know because the statistics are not available. And finally, that maybe is that while the death by suicide is not high, the attempt of suicide is also dangerous. And that can be significant, because when I attempt, there's a high probability that I'm going to attempt again and use something more lethal, more dangerous. And if I'm going through this ideation with this struggle, it means it's going to cause psychological burden on me, and it's going to manifest itself in other medical problems. So no matter how we look at it, it's all dangerous.
Yes.
And with that note, I urge our people, our government, all stakeholders, and I compliment you to take this bull by its horn and lead the way for suicide prevention.
Thank you very much, Robert. And what you're seeing is very, very true. If we do not attend, if we do not put attention to it, at the end of the day, it's going to be like a car crash in our face, and we have to deal with it. And I'm very grateful that Cura Plus is putting attention to this, and that we are able to talk about it, and we will continue talking about it with you, Robert, too, because we are very grateful to have you in the program to put attention on this, and we're going to continue putting attention on this matter because it is very serious. Danke para escutarnos a noite de outro programa de Cura Plus te informar a nossa papia over de suicídio. Algo que, para opiniones, maneira Robert também saca tabu, pero no mesmo momento também é tão realidade que nós temos que viver com ele. Situações que estão passando na nossa comunidade, rond o mundo, cambio que tem no momento aqui, tapone que nós temos que pôr atenção nisso. Danke para escutarnos a noite. E lá nos pisa ter uma outra oportunidade de outro programa de Cura Plus para informar. Danke.